Hey guys, this is Anon, and today I am starting a brand new series all about being clutch. Basically, I'm going to define being clutch as any kind of endgame situation where you're the only team or only tank left alive on your team in a 1 versus 1, 1 versus 2, 3, 4, etc. situation. Basically, the most difficult positions you can be in a battle, where it's up to you to carry the team to victory. There's no help coming. It's basically all on you. This series has basically come to be because the #1 request I always get, basically since I started videos, is trying to get into the head of a Unicum player. And honestly, for a Unicum player, once you're in these clutch situations is a lot of times where the game begins. I mean, you've been going through this entire battle trying to support your team as best as you can and conserving hit points to give yourself a chance to win the battle in the end. And, quite frequently we find ourselves in these situations where it really is truly up to you, and you have to use every tool in your arsenal to try and come out victorious. There are honestly a million different ways you can go about winning this situation, and so that is really what this series is going to come down to. I'm going to take replays, some that you've seen, some that you haven't seen. The ones that you have, we'll be looking at in a different light, really focused just on that endgame scenario and what you can do to put yourself in the best position, and hopefully start to get yourself in a good mental kind of state that when you find these kinds of things happening, you can very quickly assess what's happening and make the right choices at least a little bit more frequently, or give you some of the tools to kind of help go about that. So we're going to jump right into probably the most straightforward situation, just so we can talk about some of the basics and some of the things that I gravitate towards right away. So we're looking at a situation now of a 1 versus 1 where you may or may not have a little bit less hit points, and you're talking about tanks in different classes, whereas I'm in this Leo and I am looking at an IS-7 at full health. So right here is where you have to process a lot of information very, very quickly to make some educated decisions that'll really determine the rest of the engagement. The first thing you have to do is assess the situation extremely quickly. That can be knowing what tanks are alive, how much health they have, where they're located, and this all comes from keeping an eye on the battle as you work up to this point. So in this situation, we're very simple. I have got one enemy tank left, a full health IS-7. I know exactly where he is on the map, and so I can make my next decisions pretty quickly based on that. One of the most important things you have to think about very quickly is the strengths and weaknesses both of the tank you're driving and the tanks that you still have yet to fight. So in this situation, I'm in a Leopard 1, which has a fantastic gun, good penetration, extremely good mobility, but is very weak on armor. I can't take a lot of shots, especially because I have lower health than he does. The IS-7 is a heavy tank, extremely troll armor. It's very hard to Circle of Death because it does have enough traverse speed, so I need to kind of consider those situations before deciding kind of where to go next. Based on everything we've just figured out, now I have to decide where is the best position for a victory. In a 1 versus 1, you have to decide pretty quickly if you're better off in a fight or flight situation. Do you go for a Circle of Death and brawl, or do you relocate on the map to something that's going to put you in a better position, both for your tank to beat that tank and possibly reset to make things more challenging on the red team? In this situation, I've decided that being slightly lower health and the IS-7 is close to hard cover, which means it'll be really hard to circle him, I would prefer to relocate, use the camo, confuse him a little bit, and choose the engagement with him on more of my own terms. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and turn around and start to run away. I know it's a 1 versus 1 situation and I have speed on him, but like I said, based on all that information that I processed very quickly, it's too much of a gamble to fight him head up. I would rather relocate and use this tank to its really, really strong strengths. So just keeping an eye on what's happening here. Obviously, he's rolling into cap because he's worried I'm going to run away. So I'm swinging around. Unfortunately, I get spotted, so you have to be careful with that with the lighter tanks and with the mediums. If your goal is to attack him and try and whittle down some of that health without being spotted, then you have to really dictate. And so right here is another instance of the fight or flight. He knows where I am, so I didn't achieve my goals as I circled around the first time of letting that camera reset and trying to whittle him down from a distance. So I do the exact same thing over again. Flip around, run away, and some of this is about knowing your map, which I'm going to swing around because I know there's some bushes on this far side. As I'm running away from him, it's going to let that camera reset. So even though he knows which direction I'm running, he doesn't know what I'm going to do, so it'll let me work my way around and into the bushes over here to try and get some spots at a distance and try and equalize the battle here a little bit. Since I'm down on hit points, if I can get a couple shots into him fairly quickly, it'll equalize it a little bit and make it a better situation kind of going forward and how he moves in on it. All of this has put me in a position to fight on my terms. It's always going to be easier in a 1-versus-1 situation, so you can't always do it. But anytime you can dictate the engagement, it makes you much more powerful and difficult to beat. So here we go. I'm just taking pot shots with heat and frustrating him. Anytime you can frustrate him into making mistakes is a huge advantage. And so I want him at some point to go ahead and charge me because it's going to put him in open ground, even if I have to take a couple shots to get there. If he gets away from buildings and gives me the ability to get the circle in, it means I'm good for at least 2 shots compared to him. So it really tips it in our favor. So I'm just keeping the spots, doing a good job of kind of baiting him into the position I want it to be, taking the shots I can. I have no armor, so you can't really side scrape. There's no defense except for your speed and positioning. So really just working in that way. The one mistake I make here is he does go ahead and give me a couple shots. I probably could have gone ahead and gone for the circle faster, but I'm really just being careful at this point. Because I've gained the advantage with hit points, you have the ability to be a little bit more aggressive, but I just want to make sure that I don't really make any big mistakes and give him that opportunity to come back for the win. So now that he's shot and worked himself in here, I have some room to work with him, so now it goes ahead and lets me do it. But this is why I've worked myself into this situation, is because of this right here. You just can't take shots for granted, especially against Russian tanks. Just got to keep yourself with as much advantage as possible. Okay, so I'm going to switch now to another battle actually on the same map, just so we can show some of the differences. So it's just now becoming a 1-versus-2 situation, and we're going to go through the exact same steps that I just talked about before. So you might have missed it pretty quickly, but I am in fairly low health at 340 in the T-23E3 up against a fairly low health Ferdinand and a fairly low health Louvre. So both are more than one shot for me, especially with the very low alpha of this tank. But both are also to my left and fairly in town. So it's leaving this right side kind of open to me. Assessing strengths and weaknesses becomes a little more difficult the more tanks we add in the 1-versus situation. The T-23E3 is fairly mobile, has some decent gun depression, has very fast firing gun, but absolutely no armor. So I know almost for sure that I'm going to have to relocate because I can't take them head to head. The Ferdinand is a giant gun, but is extremely slow, which means if I have a chance to isolate him and get behind him, that should allow for an easy win. The Louvre is a little bit more difficult, very, very accurate gun, very large. It's going to be pretty hard to penetrate from the front, so all of those are kind of the stuff I have to keep in mind. Based on that information, it was pretty obvious I'm going to need to relocate. I need a position, hopefully that's going to allow me to use some of the gun depression and speed. Hopefully I can isolate them a little bit, but just kind of leading them into a more advantageous position is what I'm going to go for. So I'm going to head out to the corner of this map and just kind of see if I can get spots and hopefully start to pick them off a little bit at a distance. So here we go. I'm on the run. I'm making a good decision to go ahead and switch to APCR here because I'm against much heavily armored tanks. I pick up kind of the spot on the Ferdinand as I'm on my way, so it lets me have an idea of how they're going to engage me and which direction they're going to push up from. I'm swinging around, but keeping an eye on the guns. I realize that I probably can't make it all the way back around, so I'm just going to have to try and lead them in and use some of the advantages I have, and really just trying to use some nice tricks to kind of keep them at a distance. Anytime you see a tank start to slow down as he approaches, when you've got more than one in a situation, you should probably assume that the flank is coming, especially since he was coming up on the left, and that's exactly the situation I have coming in. I know I can probably take one shot from him, but that's all. So this is my chance to go ahead and move, use that APCR, get the quick kill on him, and now I'm starting to isolate tanks, which is exactly what you want. I'm hoping to swing around and kind of bait him into making a mistake. It's something I'll talk about a lot. Anytime you can make them make the mistake, it's going to obviously give you much more chances to win. So trying to get the spots back on, and hopefully I can catch him focused on one direction. Again, this is also all just little stuff that you can try and use, tricks that you pick up as you end up in these situations to try and kind of fight your way through it. I'm not going to make everything a bullet point because there's so many ways you can do it that you just kind of have to figure out what works for you, and again, assess those strengths of the tanks. So the Ferdinand's backed up and done exactly what he should. He backed up enough to the point where he wants me to make the mistake and come out and try and get a circle on him that'll give him a chance to get one shot on me. So back to the fight or flight. That's clearly a situation that's not going to work for me. I was hoping not to get spotted as I came around, but knowing the map, I know that this is enough of a ridgeline and I'm short enough that even if he can get a shot on me, it's going to be extremely difficult. So again, I can put myself in that position to reset everything. Now I'm far enough away, he can't see me, so I have a few opportunities to try and sneak a shot in and get that damage more equalized, trying to get him within a one shot, because then at the very least, based on time, it gives yourself a chance. So since he missed, it lets me turn around and start to close that distance a little bit, which is exactly what I'm going to do. And again, I talk about keeping to the strengths of your tank. I have fantastic gun depression, so I want to come up on this hill and use the ridgeline to make myself as small a target as possible and start to get into the weak points of that Ferdinand, which is the top of the tank. Anything from the sides is going to be much more difficult to get. So take a couple shots, but because of that great reload and he moves forward, lets me go ahead and swing around and get the victory, and just giving myself the positions and the advantages to have the chance at that win. Okay, so we're going to look at one last scenario today in my E3 on Himmelsdorf. Being in a turretless TD is always going to present yourself with a few more challenges than something with a turret. So right off the bat, we're going to be able to assess everything. Okay, so we find ourselves fairly lucky that all three tanks are spotted right now. The bad news is that it's a very difficult situation. So I put one shot into the 704, who was a two-shot tank. I've got an E4 that's a two-shot tank, and I've got an IS-7 that's between a two and a three-shot right off the bat. The 704 is directly in front of me, and the two other tanks are to my right, so it gives me enough time to deal with the 704 and try and stay protected before having to move on. Again, this is a lot more situation to kind of analyze. I have most of my hit points, and I'm in an E3 that is incredibly good with armor. This is a fairly flat map, so not going to be a ton of ways to protect it, except for staying kind of in motion. The bottom of the E3 is incredibly difficult to pen. The gun is fairly average for a tank destroyer, but offers plenty of penetration, so I shouldn't have a trouble getting through anything. It's just going to be a matter of keeping myself from being circled with the terrible, terrible mobility. So 704 I can pen fairly easily. The E4 you need to be worried about because he can start to get on your side, and the IS-7 has obvious difficulties where it's difficult to pen with its troll armor, and can get in a circled situation. Positioning is going to be extremely key to have any chance to win this whatsoever. When you're looking at the minimap, I'm fairly surrounded in a triangle situation, so my number one goal is going to be getting as many tanks in one front as possible. If you're in a turretless tank destroyer and they get behind you, it's going to be extremely difficult to win. Something else I need to consider is, because I have slow traverse, I want to stay fairly close to either corners, buildings, or dead tanks, something that if they start to get behind me, I can brush them off a little bit. So my goal in positioning here is, like I said, to put them on one front. So if I kill this 704 and keep driving forward, it's going to allow me to kind of control which direction they come from. I also know that there's corners in the buildings on this other side that'll let me kind of back up into them and start to protect my situation a little bit. So here we go, time to put that action, or that plan, into action. So I go ahead and charge the 704, hoping to at least get the bounce and not lose too much health, but I need to keep driving forward and propel myself kind of into the next engagement. I talk about that a lot in my other battles, where it's kind of like billiards, where you use English to propel yourself to a better position, and that's what I'm going for here. I was hoping the 704 would turn this corner, and luckily he gets a nice missed shot. You can't necessarily count on it there, but it's still something that you want to make yourself as difficult to hit as possible, and both in close range and in motion, the E3 is very difficult to hit from below. So now I've turned a 1 versus 3, needing many shots, into a 1 versus 1. And right there I got a little bit lucky. I thought the IS-7 would come around to my backside and was prepared for it, but luckily I was able to turn quick enough to stop his advance and again put myself in that good position. Using this tank to its advantages, when you're in that turretless tank destroyer, you've got to keep your front forward. So that's why I'm using a combination of hugging as close as I can, and you can see how I kind of aim for that drive wheel. It's sometimes just to kind of make him stop a little bit and not give him an opportunity to get around me and win that engagement really nicely. But again, it was all that analysis up front to have a plan to give me a way to propel that into the opportunity to win. So there's a million more tactics we can talk about, and that's why I've decided to turn this into more of a series. I've got a lot more kind of thoughts that we can go through in future episodes, and other tactics that'll help you win these very clutch situations. As always, if you like this video, please subscribe on YouTube. I appreciate all the support. I'm regularly streaming on Twitch, so follow there and set notifications to on as well, and we'll have plenty more coming your way.